Welcome. Here we are, breath to breath, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Bryan Mirabella. Bryan, thank you for being here.
So much, Perrin, for having me.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. All right, let me read off this beautiful bio because there's some really great stuff that I want to make sure we all know. So Bryan is a human performance specialist with a focus on breath work. He is a lifelong athlete with over 3 decades of personal training experience and a natural motivator who discovered early on his gifts for helping others improve their health and well-being. Based in New York City, Bryan is a certified master instructor in Oxygen Advantage, restorative breathing by Dr. Lois Laney, and a Weckman method coach. He's created a life-changing 30-day daily email breathing program for beginners and athletes that teaches you how to breathe, a 6-month Recode Your Breath program, along with private sessions. His wide range of clientele include top executives, Olympic athletes, new mothers, those with serious health conditions, and everyone in between. So basically everyone. His mission is to provide tools for healthy living, longevity, and self-empowerment. In over 30 years of training, he had never crossed paths with functional breathing until he read The Oxygen Advantage. Excellent book. Since becoming an OA instructor back in August 2018, he has been able to revolutionize his health, completely healing his deviated septum and soft tissue injuries through the power of breath. This internal work led him to reinvigorate his career, placing him on the divine path of helping others. Bryan has fundamentally changed how people look at the simple idea of breathing. He has been helping those who are looking to new wellness approaches, those who are looking to elevate their athletic performance, and those who have been searching for answers with their physical or mental health. By making the OA knowledge accessible, that's Oxygen Advantage, knowledge accessible and easily digestible to people across the world from all walks of life, his work transcends wellness and inspires a fresh look at the foundation of life. Bryan Mirabella, bravo. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Absolutely. Oh, I mean, gosh,
Your
such
South
good
Carolina
stuff.
accent.
I'm gonna be real nerdy. It's actually a dialect. That's my speech pathology background, but I will take it. Thank you very much. And I know you're based in New York, but tell everyone where you have the pleasure of speaking to us from.
Right now, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Uh-huh.
I want to show you the mountains in the
Yes.
background. I
Ugh,
visit the sun, but I'm in Utah.
so jealous. That's amazing. All right. So, Bryan, I start off every interview with the same question. Basically, it's a take on your family of origin story, but what's your breadth of origin story? So, I know you gave us a lot of information here, but I mean, is that actually, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. You tell me, like, what does the breath, like, what does that origin story look like for you?
Yeah, well, it's beautiful because this month is my 5-year anniversary of becoming a breathing instructor.
Yes.
And 5 is the number of grace. So it's perfect timing for the information and us to be getting together and talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, my breathing journey started in New York City at a barefoot seminar. It's a woman who does barefoot training. She's a podiatrist, but she does functional movement. And it was a 3-day workshop, and it was supposed to be learning about movement. So in the afternoon session, they brought out a speaker. Her name was Dr. Lois Laney. She's a cranial physiologist. She owns a sleep apnea center in Phoenix, Arizona. And she started to talk about breath. And my first reaction was, oh, Jesus, why is this woman here? And why are we talking about breath when we're supposed to be learning about movement? Because up until that point,
Yeah.
I never knew anything about breathing. And I have every certification under the sun. I've worked with all the top movement coaches in the world, and no one ever spoke about breathing. It was always breathe in your nose and out your mouth. Or if you're doing a repetition, breathe out on the contraction, breathe in on the eccentric contraction. That was it. That was literally it. So after 90 minutes, I was blown away because everything that she stated in terms of irregular breathing patterns, I was like, oh, geez, I'm feeling everything she's talking about.
Yeah.
And then, thank God, on the second day, she spoke again. And then she invited people to come up on stage, and she was going to take this Q-tip with white flower oil on it, and she was going to stick it in people's noses. So you could open up the nose and wake up the limbic center to get somebody out of fight or flight. So I immediately raised my hand because now I was hooked.
Were you the first word? Were you the first person?
Yeah, out of 40 people.
Uh-huh.
So I went up there. She's a wonderful human being. She put her hand on my shoulder, but keeping distance, but giving me this beautiful, compassionate, empathetic feeling like I was safe with her. And I felt safe. And she told me what she was going to do. And she stuck that Q-tip in my right nostril first. Now, I grew up to a woman in 1969 who had been smoking since she was 12. And at 25, she got pregnant and she smoked her whole pregnancy. And then I wasn't breastfed, I was bottle fed. So I never really established the muscles in my jaw that would promote an open airway. And then for 18 years, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with a smoker, a heavy Camel smoker. So I was under toxicity and stress my whole life just from the fact that I couldn't breathe through my nose. And as a young child, I had a lot of nosebleeds. Like my mom would wake up in the middle of the night in a crib and I'd be covered in blood. She'd have to rush me to the hospital and they would cauterize my nose because that's what they did back then. They would stick that stick all the way up your nose. I hated it.
Yeah.
I got my nose cauterized a million times, but it kept bleeding. Now I realized, well, it was probably bleeding because I was inhaling smoke all the time.
Yeah.
And my tissues were, just dehydrated from smoke.
Yeah.
And all the carbon monoxide that comes out of a cigarette.
Yeah.
So I established poor breathing mechanics from a very early age. And then I started wrestling. And I was the wrestler who always got nosebleeds in the middle of a match. And then my nose was broken in wrestling 4 times. So I started to have a deviated septum.
Yeah.
My nose was crooked.
Yeah.
And actually my nose, I mean, it's a little big on this way, but it's pretty straight. Right?
Yeah.
It's pretty straight, but it used to be like this.
God.
I have pictures of it. It was like this. It was pushed over this way because this side was deviated. So
well, and then as I
my nose was crooked. It was like this.
Well, the mouth breathing didn't help that either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I won't get into that yet. So, she stuck this Q-tip up my nose, and my right side, as soon as she put the Q-tip in my nose, there was a blockage. And I was, moving away, and she kept telling me, it's okay, you're safe. It's October 17th. It's 2022 now. It's 2017. She just kept reinforcing to my brain stem that everything was okay. I'm here, I'm present, and there's nothing that she's going to do that can hurt me. So she took that Q-tip and she pushed it through the blockage. And I was like this. I was crying. My eyes started watering because the white flower oil, which is the most widely used analgesic in Chinese medicine, what you just showed the audience.
What's say that again.
They usually put it on the skin. Okay. The bottle will tell you not to put it on an open wound or inside, but she's like, no, you could put it inside your nose. Okay. Because the menthol will stimulate the tissue to decompress. Yeah. Right. So having a deviated septum, I also had what's called rhinitis, which is from mouth breathing. It's not from having allergies. Allergies is a byproduct of having a blocked nose. But I had something even worse. I had rhinosinusitis. So I was getting sinus infections every year. Then it became every 6 months. Yeah. Then it was every 3 months. And they were debilitating. Yeah. Sinus infections are debilitating. You feel like you have the flu. You can't move. And it would take a week to go away. I'd have to go to the acupuncturist, and it never really worked. It never really cured my issues. So I started using the white flower oil on a daily basis, morning and night, not often, just when I woke up in the morning, so after she did that, I said, how can I get certified by you? And she's like, well, just so happens that I'm staying in New York for a week. And next week I'm doing a certification in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And she's a hygienist. She works with a lot of dentists.
Yeah.
So I went for 3 days and I got certified by her. She deals with breathing on the cranial nerve side.
No, I
Completely
love this.
took an advantage.
Well, I was going to say, I just know, of course, she works with dentists and she's a hygienist. This is why you have a little bit of the lens.
And pathologists.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say that's the lens that I like recognized and basically perked up on.
Right. So it's the cranial nerves that form the basis of your entire system. That's the bedrock of the system. And breathing affects your cranial nerves, and your cranial nerves affect your breathing because it's the root of who you are, right? You can't get any deeper than your breath. There's nothing more powerful.
Sorry, I'm like furiously writing everything you're saying.
Yeah.
You can't get any deeper than your breath. Oh my God.
Yeah. You can't make any deeper physiological changes than actually recoding how you breathe.
Man, I love that.
Right.
Well, yeah.
And I use that word recoding because, like you and I were talking prior to the interview, that I'm not teaching people how to breathe. I'm teaching them to remember how they were born to breathe.
Right. Right. Well, and what I find so fascinating is, would you say that you were like about 30 years old when you first met Lois? Or
No, I'm 53 now, and I was 48. So I've been
okay. I was going to say, all right, so you were close to 5 decades worth of dysfunctional breathing, and you reversed your projection or your trajectory of your health, all with the basis of breathing. And what I love about everything that you're saying and everything that basically I believe and I teach is that respiration, so let's say we have a triangle of health with our hierarchy, man, that just like you're saying, the bedrock, respiration and breath is the basis. That is the bare minimum, because if you're not breathing, you're dead. And if you're not breathing well, you better believe everything that's stacked on top of it is just going to really suffer and integrity wise. So I love that you met Lois Laney. And so ever since then, you've just been on like this path of like uncover, get curious. And what I like about you is that you try it all out on yourself. How I actually found you, and I'll just say this for the people listening, is I was interviewing Jacko, and y'all have been in a oxygen advantage masterclass symposium, and he said that someone was talking about tongue rest posture and using this white flower oil to open up the airway. And I was like, who is this? I need to talk to him. And it was you. It was you. And what I was saying earlier before we recorded, and I'll say again, is I love when I see overlapping patterns. That lights me up more than anything else. And then what I mean by that is people from different backgrounds and different professions, from different silos of what they offer and what they're teaching, literally saying the same thing, using different language, different approaches, different lenses. But that's how we get better as a society, as a people. That's how we remember what we've forgotten, is when we have multiple people saying the same thing in different ways. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes when I asked if you would let me interview you.
I'm not teaching, I'm instructing, and no one is below me. And no one is above me. Because I just happen to know a little bit more about breathing than someone else does, but they know more about something else. So there's always just a sharing of information, because that's how you lift the world up. There's no competition in this.
Absolutely. Well, are you ready for some more sharing of your information?
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you more about fixing and healing your deviated septum. So my septum became deviated from chronic mouth breathing, and I'm not talking like, but just barely open. tongue was tied, so it did not rest on the roof of my palate. And then just over time, your facial structures, your maxilla becomes smaller, more narrow. And then that's what basically is deviating my septum. I didn't get knocked in the face 4 times wrestling. So it's usually a combination of things compounded over time. I had to have my deviated septum surgically repaired, but I love hearing about other alternatives. So is this something that I'm going to play devil's advocate? Did you get any like CBCT scans or imaging, or is it basically you just saw your nose like transform as you began breathing better?
Yeah, when I was 21, no, not 21, when I was about 26, I
Yeah,
went to an ENT at Columbia in New York
yeah,
City, and he
yeah.
was like, "How are you breathing?" And they did the surgery on me. They shaved down my
Mm.
turbinates.
Yeah, same,
They
same.
shaved down my turbinates at 26. But I was telling you before this session, I'm an open book.
Yeah.
3 years later, I had gotten married and had a child at a shotgun wedding, and it didn't go very well. And it brought out all these repressed emotions in me from childhood.
Mm,
So I went down the rabbit hole and I did things to my body that I had never done before in my life. And one of them was putting things in my nose, recreational drugs. And
mm-hmm.
I took that open airway and I destroyed it again.
Yeah,
And I created that, I had made that deviated septum come back,
yeah.
and the rhinitis come back, the sinusitis come back. So I had to overcome not breathing well a second time. And this time I did it without any medical intervention,
Right. Well,
through what we were talking about.
I'll say you bring up a really good point of how like you can fix things and it still doesn't stick, and you can try to do things the right way and it still doesn't stick because you have to be consistent and you can't take it for granted. And breathing is something that you're doing all the time, and if you're either doing it well or doing it dysfunctionally, they compound for a positive, they compound for a negative, and it goes both ways, and it's constantly fluid. And oh my god, I've definitely experimented with putting things in my body that are so horrible, but how would I know how good I feel if I hadn't known how bad I felt? So
Right.
there's value in all those experiences, and thank you for sharing those. I would say, now that you're on this side of breathing through your nose, what would you recommend as a really great like treatment, or I guess protocol, if you even want to go that route, for people saying, oh, I have rhinitis, I've got like chronic sinus infections. I get this all the time. I'm like, you got to start small, but I would love like your input about what do you suggest?
Well, you have to learn to breathe through your nose.
Yeah.
So the best way to do it is to make sure you're breathing through your nose while you're sleeping.
Mhm.
Because while you're sleeping, you're in perfect harmony.
Mm.
And if you can tape your mouth, most people will say, well, I breathe with my mouth closed when I'm sleeping.
How do they know? They're asleep.
Yeah, but I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I
No,
hear that all the
same,
time.
same. That's what I think in my head. How do you know? You're unconscious.
Yeah. So if we can establish the neurological way to breathe while we're sleeping, we can carry that over through the day. You were talking about the triangle before. So
Mhm.
in my triangle at the top is breathing. Doesn't necessarily mean it's number
Ah,
one.
uh-huh.
Over here is emotions. The other end of the triangle is sleep.
Yeah,
So it's a feedback loop. If
yeah,
my breathing is off, like if I'm mouth breathing, then I'm probably not going to get good sleep because I'm offloading carbon dioxide while I rest, which means my body can't restore its pH, which means it can't heal. And if I'm not going to get a good night's sleep, then my emotions when I wake up are immediately going to be off, my emotions, because I know I didn't sleep well. And everybody who wakes up going, oh man, they go, oh, they're going to sigh. They're going to take that big breath, they're going to sigh, and they're going to get rid of more carbon dioxide. And that creates the irregular breathing pattern throughout the day. It becomes reflexive in the respiratory center, which
Mhm.
is in your brainstem. So it's reflexive means habitual. So it's just a habit of not breathing correctly. It doesn't mean that's who you are.
Yeah.
So in order to correct the habit, we must establish nose breathing while we're sleeping, because then when you're sleeping and you tape your mouth, and there are many tapes out there, you don't have to get worried out there that what if I cover my lips fully? There are tapes that go around the mouth. So you
Myotape
could have a
is
whole
great. Yeah. Yeah.
myotape from Oxygen Advantage. It
Mhm.
works really well for kids. I tell parents, but if your kid doesn't want to wear it, draw on the outside of the tape. Have them draw on it, make really cute faces, and you put it on yourself. So
Yeah,
then
yeah.
they put it on. They're going to bed. You have it on. They have it on. Mommy's going to sleep with the tape, and
Yeah.
then it's like they make their own choice. It's
Yeah.
not you telling them, "Oh, you're going to do this." They've made the choice that they want to do it, because a kid always wants that.
Yeah.
So then
So
once
so
you
does the
establish,
adult. The adult wants to make their own choices too.
right, right,
Everyone does. Yeah.
right. So when the brain learns neurologically to breathe correctly with the mouth closed, the tongue won't have a chance to fall back in the throat. The
Mm-hmm.
tongue will stay on the roof. And if it stays on the roof, it creates an open airway. It creates a jaw that sets forward. And when the tongue is on the roof of the mouth, it pumps the sinuses with nitric oxide. And that's really the key, because it's the
Mm-hmm.
nitric oxide that creates the releasing, I don't want to go too science, but it's the endothelial
Yeah.
relaxing factor,
Yeah.
which is all the linings of your veins, capillaries, arteries, and lymph. So nitric oxide controls the flow of your body,
Mm-hmm.
and it stabilizes your vagus nerve. So if I breathe through my nose while I'm sleeping and I get a good night's sleep and my vagus nerve
Yeah.
is stabilized, I wake up feeling good. And
Yeah.
then I move through the day feeling good.
I
Right.
I just drew your little triangle.
Right.
I love that. All right. Can I offer slightly different
Yeah.
troubleshooting feedback? Or not
Yeah.
feedback, I don't know, just my perspective. So from my world as speech therapist, speech language pathologist, and myofunctional therapy, we see all these people whose tongues just are dysfunctional, and mine too. Like you can tell it to rest up, but sometimes it physically can't get there, whether it's low
Right.
tone or poor patterning, or restrictions in the oral tissues, all these things. And what I think is so interesting is my thought process was always, you have to be able to do it consciously before you can do it unconsciously. And I mean, I don't know who's right or who's wrong, but I love that it's a different input. And what I what I think is so cool is one way will work for one and the other way will work for the other person. And there's always more tools that you can provide. I always like to like tell clients, try the mouth tape during the day so you can at least get some tolerance to it. I also really enjoy having two different types so that you get to choose, and maybe you even give like your skin a break from like the points where the words are hard today, where the sticky stuff where the sticky stuff is, but we're definitely saying the same thing. I do know that when your tongue, and there's 8 muscles of the tongue, when it doesn't have full range of motion, or if it doesn't have strength, or even really like sustainability, if it doesn't have the endurance to stay up when you're supine on your back, that's sometimes where the tongue will slide back, and that's when you end up with like the mouth tape halfway across the room because they've just like
Sure.
ripped it off and they can't tolerate it. But we're definitely seeing
Sure.
very similar things. So I love all that. I also I like the science side. So get sciencey. Like I like blending the functional with the science. I think it's all really cool. And actually I have a science question if you're ready. Okay. Law of cellular respiration. I was listening to some of your previous podcast, and you brought this up, and I thought you explained it so beautifully. And I would love if you don't mind sharing a little bit about it here.
Sure. This is what everybody needs to be taught,
Yeah.
because breathing doesn't happen here necessarily. This
Yeah.
is where the action starts. It happens at the intra and extracellular levels.
Yeah.
So you have 100 trillion cells in your body, and every single cell does the exact same thing when it comes to respiration. It, every cell in the body has organelles in the cell. Their organelles mean the little tiny things.
Yeah.
We have big ones, organs. So
Yeah.
every cell represents what we do. We breathe, we excrete, we have circulation, endocrine system. So on the macro, also on the micro.
Yeah.
And at the micro level, we have a red blood cell. And everybody knows that red blood cells carry oxygen. But what they don't realize is that when I breathe in, that doesn't mean I'm getting oxygenated, because there's a quality of that breath that matters. Just because I'm taking a breath in doesn't mean I'm getting oxygen into the tissues and organs. So with this law of cellular respiration that was originated in 1904 by a Danish scientist named Christian Bohr, whose son, Niels Bohr, won the Nobel Prize for quantum physics.
Yeah.
He stated that inside the red blood cell, you have oxygen, but oxygen needs a carrier to go through circulation. And that carrier is hemoglobin. So in the red blood cell, they're bound. Hemoglobin is the mini school bus that holds on to the children. And the children need to be seatbelted in.
Yeah.
So the seatbelt is the hemoglobin. The red blood cell is the mini yellow school bus. Now, in order for the children to get out of the seat safely, you need a signal. And that signal would be pushing the button to get out of the seatbelt. Well, in this metaphor, it's carbon dioxide.
Okay.
So you need to have carbon dioxide present in the body in order to create the signal for hemoglobin to disassociate from carbon dioxide. And the Bohr law is called the oxygen-hemoglobin dissociation curve.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the law of cellular respiration. And again, it's a law. I always repeat that because people will then be like, well, I wasn't taught that. I'm like, no, it's a law. It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm saying can't even be debated because it's a law. So in order so carbon dioxide, which is produced by every tissue in your body through aerobic respiration, if carbon dioxide is present, it's going to walk into the red blood cell. It's going to signal hemoglobin to let go of oxygen. So it's the most powerful hormone in your body. Now, I've worked with people in medicine and they're like, carbon dioxide is not a hormone. I'm like, what's the definition of a hormone? It's a cell that it's a molecule that signals another molecule to do something. Carbon dioxide signals hemoglobin to dissociate from oxygen. That's a hormone.
Yeah.
But we think of it as a waste gas, but it's never a waste gas.
It got such a bad rep as a child, like CO2 bad, but really CO2.
It's not a waste gas at all.
No.
It's just excess.
Yeah.
Right? Your body's just constantly balancing carbon dioxide and oxygen.
Right. Oh, sorry. I just remembered there was a part of one of your interviews that I heard that you're talking about CPR. Literally, the first thing we do is breathe CO2 into whoever is in this cardiac arrest or is having this trauma. Literally, it's almost like this is the signal. CO2 is the signal to the body that this process needs to begin. And I thought that was a beautiful example that made perfect sense. And I think is talk about being easily digestible information people can understand. There's a reason we breathe CO2 into someone else. That is our life-saving gift to the other person.
Right. And, your brainstem, in the lower half of your brainstem, which is your primal brain.
Are we talking about like the reptile brain, basically?
No, that's your amygdala.
Okay.
So the brainstem is in the lower. It's where the cranial nerves actually emanate from.
Okay.
All 12 cranial nerves grow from the brainstem.
It's like, note to self, brush up on my cranial nerves.
Get in there. Well, we should do another talk because we talked about tongue-tied. I can teach you things that Dr. Lois told me about things like that because I do tongue exercises.
Yeah.
We'll get there another time.
We can just say real quick on that. There are so many ways to support the body. I am just saying what I've known from
Yeah.
my experience, whether it's personal or professional, and I always welcome other perspectives. So yeah, we're absolutely having that talk, and I'm really excited about it.
So that's the law of cellular respiration. It's very simple.
Yeah.
If I don't have carbon dioxide in my body, which means I'm mouth breathing through the
Yeah.
day and while I sleep, then I'm actually creating an affinity between oxygen and hemoglobin. So if I was wearing a pulse oximeter,
Mm-hmm.
pulse oximeter would say I was 99% saturated. And people go, yeah, I'm fully loaded. And I'm like, no, that's not what you want. There's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that sweet spot is 97 to 98.5.
So I was just thinking, I think I do have one.
Mm.
I can't remember which box I put it under. Might be in probably in another one, but anyway, yeah, a pulse oximeter.
Well, we've all had it on during COVID.
Yeah.
We've all
Yeah.
had our oxygen saturation checked during COVID.
Yeah.
And they're looking to see if this person's below 95, they might be presenting a respiratory illness.
Mm-hmm.
So we think, well, the closer we are to 100, the better it is. And that's not necessarily true. There's a sweet spot, 97 to 98.5. If we're below that, the brain thinks we're in stress. And if we're above that, we're not getting any oxygen to the tissues because it's bound, because there's no carbon dioxide present to disassociate it.
Right. And well, speaking of like COVID, I've got notes all over the place. So you had talked really eloquently about breathing with masks, and the notes I took, and I would love for you to correct whatever fallacies I wrote down, but basically the fast breathing. So mask wearing has created two patterns, either very quickly breathing, fast breathing, or barely breathing. And if we're breathing too quickly, we're getting too alkalitic. Am I saying right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if we're barely breathing, we're getting into acidosis. So essentially the alkalitic with really, really quickly breathing is creating brain fog. Basically, we're not able to actually digest or absorb the oxygen into our cells. And then barely breathing, essentially the acidosis. I don't know. Can you describe or break that down a little bit better?
Means that you're not getting oxygen released from the red blood cell.
Okay.
And the acidic means you're not removing enough carbon dioxide. So you're holding on, you're becoming lactic. And that's a corrosive environment. So that would be people who have cancer. That would be people who have diabetes.
Yeah.
Right. It's always oxidative stress related. There's only one disease on the planet, and that's called acidosis. Every other disease has a root, and it's oxidative stress. You can't have something go wrong with you if you are breathing correctly.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have that sweet spot of enough oxygen being released, and oxygen knows what to do. It heals the body. In fact, they awarded the oxygen the Nobel Prize in 2020. Right? In 1990.
Who? In 2020 to who? Who got that?
I don't remember the names of the scientists.
I'll look it up.
So I work off beautiful science.
Yeah.
I work off a physiological law of cellular respiration, and I work off the 1998 Nobel Prize for nitric oxide. And nitric oxide, now we're getting back to this mask issue. Got to be very gentle here.
Yeah.
God gave me a nose that produces in the paranasal cavity this miracle gas called nitric oxide. And through the Nobel Prize, we know that nitric oxide is antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial, and wait for it, antiviral. Yeah. So as I breathe in, and if my nose is unblocked and I breathe in slow, deeply using my diaphragm, I produce this nitric oxide up to 15% more. So now as the nitric oxide mixes with the oxygen being inhaled, it renders all these particulates that are coming in through the air inert, because that's its job, is to protect me. Why don't animals get sick? Because they breathe through their nose
As I say, I'll ask her, Vanna.
Now, and when they do get sick,
Yeah.
they're house pets. And the house pets are getting sick because they're drinking fluoridated and chlorinated water or eating their non-species specific diet. It has nothing to do with breathing, although the diet could affect negatively their breathing.
Right. Well, and you just gave me a perfect segue because thank you for describing that. And you do have a gift for making things very digestible because these are very complex topics. And even like I can tell you, like even my ego is like, Perrin, why did you even allude that you might not know all your cranial nerves? I'm like, because I just don't. I gotta review it, okay? I gotta review it. It's a lot of information.
It is a lot of information.
It's a lot of information, and I have at one point I've known it, and I'm gonna review it, and I will know it even better next time. But I just love having these conversations because we have to keep hearing it, saying it, doing it, knowing it, to be able to actually digest it, to like really hear it. So you did a great job with that. And then, like I said, that beautiful segue of food. Two things. I literally took a screen grab of your recent story that says, I think it's, are you 5 years off caffeine or is it 3, 5? 5. I was drinking coffee and I was like, oh, I better drink some tea for this conversation. Oh my God, Bryan, I was doing this hormonal test and because I really want to try to understand my body, my nutrition. And that's been my goal this year. And for these hormone tests, like for this hormone testing through the Dutch test, I couldn't have caffeine like for like the day of. Oh my gosh, it reminded me of going through Adderall withdrawal. Like literally, I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't realized how much I had gotten addicted to or at least how much I was consuming until I couldn't do it. And I just want to say one, applause for being 5 years caffeine free, but I would love for you to talk about specifically the effect of caffeine on our ability to breathe and respiration, because that I really am not hearing much discussion at all.
Yeah. Well, caffeine is a vasoconstrictor.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If my arteries and veins are constricting, that means they get smaller. So that means that the heart has to pump harder to get blood through a smaller valve. And that's going to increase my heart rate and it's going to speed up my breathing rate. So now I'm going to be off gassing. I'm going to be creating affinity of oxygen and hemoglobin. Caffeine is also, and this is on PubMed, all you have to do is type in caffeine and nitric oxide, and you will see that caffeine inhibits exhaled nitric oxide. Now that means that we are going to tighten.
Yeah.
So if we tighten, we have to increase the speed of the flow in our body. Now in 2017, Stanford came out with an amazing study. Just type in Stanford tranquil breathing. And they proved that there's a part of the brain called the locus coeruleus that spies on your breathing. We're amazing.
We are.
Superhuman.
We are. Yeah.
God gave us the tools to live through our breath, not nutritionally, but through our breath.
Yeah.
Because the breath is all you need. So this mechanism in your brain will spy on your breathing. And if you're breathing heavily, shallow and rapid through your chest and mouth, it'll send feelings to the midbrain of agitation. So now you're immediately in fight or flight. When there's agitation, the adrenal glands will send neurotransmitters of fight or flight. So I could be sitting at my computer and I have 2,000 emails. And now I'm like, I take in that big breath, which is a hypertensive breath. My locus coeruleus says this guy's in stress. And now I'm sitting still, but I'm in fight or flight because I think my brain thinks a tiger's trying to eat me.
Yeah.
But if I have enough nitric oxide production, it signals the endothelial tissue to relax. There's less internal pressure. That means I can breathe lower, slower, and deeper. So now the locus coeruleus sends signals to the midbrain of feelings of safety. of calmness. So caffeine can really disrupt all of that.
Ah, I know.
Yeah,
I
Karen,
know.
coffee is delicious.
I tried drinking all these decaf. They're like not the same.
Not this.
Um, not the same. No, literally, when you're talking about a vasoconstrictor, all I could think of was a boa constrictor, and I was like, that's why they call it the constrictor. And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking,
And it
so if
dehydrates you. That's why people have to pee. That's why people have to poop. How many people use coffee to go to the bathroom?
is it because of the constriction of your blood vessels?
The stimulation,
Okay.
stimulant, and you're not supposed to be stimulated. You're supposed to be parasympathetic.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be living like the animals where they are relaxed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, we're not supposed to be stimulated as much as we are. I mean, like you are if you're about to die, but drinking a cup of coffee is not a life or death situation. And I think just in our modern society, we have overstimulated our bodies, our minds, our breath to a crippling chronic degree.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
why it's legal. It's why it's legal because the
yeah,
things that are worst for you are what's legal: coffee,
yeah,
caffeine. I mean, caffeine, cigarettes, and alcohol.
yeah.
That's why they're
Well,
legal.
I literally just did a reel on mouth breathing. And what I find fascinating is mouth breathing has a diagnostic code and no one talks about this. Like no one
Yeah.
talks. It's I think it's RO 6.5. Oh, what is that? It's
Yeah.
so the ICD, like if you go
I
to
see.
your ICD, oh, man, you're asking me these acronyms. Basically, when you go to the doctor and if they are giving you a diagnostic code, if they're giving you a diagnosis of like depression or anxiety or high blood pressure, these have codes so that then it can be sent to your insurance company appropriately. But I mean, like mouth breathing is a disorder and we don't talk about it. And I think it's mostly because there's not a whole lot of resources or profitable interventions or quick fixes. So it's behavioral.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
environmental. It also is through the foods that you eat. It's also through the thoughts that you have, the amount of stress that you're putting on your body. It's all inclusive. I like to say this is a closed system. It is all connected. It's not like the emotions and the heart and then like your feelings and your trauma. Like
I
it's not
mean,
like they're all,
closed system.
yeah,
Because
yes.
we're in an
Oh,
atmosphere.
well, yeah, well, it's even okay. You just like one-upped me, Bryan. So you took it at one. But yeah, no, it's fascinating to me the more that I learn about my body personally, taking what I've learned from a professional level, but really just applying what I've learned personally, because you can't say like, oh, I want you to understand my experience. Here, try this on for a moment. We literally have to like fall on our face. We have to be at our lowest moments. Not always. Some people don't need as much convincing, but a lot of us are pretty stubborn, and it takes some pretty low points for us to understand we're ready to try something
Well,
different.
are we stubborn or are we breathing incorrectly because we don't have sufficient oxygen to the cerebral cortex?
Did you just answer my question with a question? I yes, I'd say the latter. The latter. One more food question
A lot of
because
that mental acuity could be transmuted.
well, I welcome that. I always welcome that. I would love to also ask you about your diet because
Oh,
yeah, because you have a very special and I'm trying to think of the right adjectives. You can help fill these in. Basically, I would love to know more about your experience with only eating fruit, what that's done, what that has done for you, and what does that look like on a daily basis?
well, I practice a mucus-free lifestyle.
Okay.
So I eat foods that don't create pus and mucus. So when you ingest something and it mixes in your belly, it's either going to go, again, just like breathing, there's only two sides of chemistry,
Yeah.
acid or alkaline, alkalytic or acidosis.
Okay.
Same thing with your food. It's either going to go in alkaline or it's going to mix and become acid.
Mm,
So fruit goes in alkaline. Now, people will say, what about the sugar? No, it's God's sugar. It was made to be eaten.
Mhm.
No child on the planet wants to eat vegetables, but they'll eat fruit.
Yeah.
And fruit is the perfect neurochemistry of the brain. It doesn't require insulin, so it goes in without any energy expenditure. So I practice. So this is a good test. When you wake up in the morning, do
Uh-huh.
you have to blow your nose? I never have to blow my nose.
I don't.
And my nose is never one side blocked more than another. I'm never congested. I
Okay.
never have. Most people are like, oh, I can't only breathe out of one side. Sometimes it changes, but that's because they're eating foods that are creating an acid environment in their body. And then the body produces pus and mucus because it senses that there's an immune response necessary to a cooked food
Yeah.
or a food like a grain or a meat, right? I don't want to, I'm trying to be careful because I know people want to
So
live.
I do live in South Carolina, and barbecue is big.
Yeah.
But no,
I've
it's
been for 10
this is
years.
your experience. This is your experience. This is your life. I just want to hear what you're doing for you.
Well,
So
for 42 years, I was on a normal standard American diet, and I haven't eaten flesh now in 10 years, and I never will again. And I'm muscular.
yeah.
Right? I'm very muscular. So you don't need protein. I take marine phytoplankton.
Uh-huh.
In this jar, you have the essence of life. I don't know if I could describe it better than that. And I've never used that term before.
Yeah.
It's
The
essence of
the
life.
essence of life. Oh, got it.
It has everything you need in a living organism called marine phytoplankton.
Right.
So when you get all the essential fats, all the essential amino acids, all the vitamins and minerals, it feeds your hypothalamus gland, which is the master conductor of God's symphony. So everything works synergistically because it's bioavailable. So when I put fruit in my body, I'm getting electrolytes, I'm getting structured water, which is the fourth phase of water, which is the real water that when the sperm and egg fuse, it pulls in structured water in order to create the sac
Yeah.
of the amniotic sac.
Yeah.
That it needs structured water. It doesn't need clear water from tea. I just pee this right out. People think, oh, I get hydrated from my water. Very little. You get hydrated from eating water.
Okay.
And it's biophotons. So even though I do need to eat because I'm addicted to food, we all are, we're addicted to eating. I don't necessarily need to eat because the real reason I'm alive is that big ball of light in the sun. And I'm really an energy being trapped in a body. So I run off electrons. So the less I put in my body, the better I'm going to function. And when I eat fruit, I don't require any energy to digest that food. So my body doesn't have to spark an immune response that would send the macrophages out of the lymph nodes that would create T cells to come and attack that food that doesn't belong in my body. And I eat mono foods. So I only eat one food at a time, which is what every animal in nature does.
Yeah.
It's only us.
Yeah, that's
We're the only species that's chronically sick. No other species is chronically sick. So what are we doing wrong? We're eating wrong and we're breathing improperly. Because those are the sides of chemistry.
I like it when you make it real simple. There's just two things. It's just two things.
Just two things. That's
Just two
chemistry.
things. You've given me a lot, like not only that I get to think about, and I love curiosity over criticism. It's not like anyone's doing it wrong. It's just that's where they are in their journey, and they get to make changes. You get to make changes to your diet, to your breathing patterns, to your lifestyle, and it's through sharing really valuable personal experiences, which honestly, the personal testimonials, that's what I find the most moving, but also just sharing information. So thank you for sharing your experience with that.
Of course.
And then last question, which is my favorite. What
Oh.
does a deep breath mean to you?
You take it through the nose,
Mm-hmm.
silently
Mm-hmm.
and effortlessly and deeply into your lower region of your body. So think about breathing into your back pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to breathe low, you breathe horizontally. So it's weird because the nostrils point down. So we think we breathe up.
So it's
We don't. The reason the nostrils point down and they're smaller is to slow down the speed of air so it's not overwhelming to the nervous system.
mm-hmm.
And then when it mixes with nitric oxide, it becomes warmed, humidified. And then show the model again. So you see those ridges inside the nose, those are called the canals, and there's
Yeah.
3 of them.
1,
And
2,
those are
3.
also turbinates.
Uh-huh.
As the air comes in, they're like the Rocky Mountains, because when the air comes over the Rocky Mountains, it gets turbulent.
Yeah.
So once it gets turbulent and it mixes it up and it heats it and humidifies it, then it hits the back of the throat on a spiral and it goes down the trachea,
Got it.
right? And that's the airway. So when you breathe horizontally into the back of your throat, you immediately pull the air as deeply into your body as you can. But it has to be silent and it has to be slow and effortless. So you don't breathe the air breathes you because you're a fish in a fishbowl. That's the atmosphere. And the atmosphere is the water. The fish doesn't know it's in the water. And my Instagram channel used to be called tensegral breathing, but people were like, it's not catchy. Nobody knows what that means. I'm ahead of my time.
What does that mean?
Tensegral breathing means that my whole body breathes, not my nose and my diaphragm. It's my whole body. If you took a fish, put it in a clear fish bowl, and you look down at the fish, you would see the whole body expand. You would see the whole entire body of the fish expand all the way to the tail. So my body should be able to breathe tensegrally. And tensegral is like a spider web. I'm made of fascia. It's the connective web of my body. I'm a fascial fitness expert. So I bring fascia into the equation of breathing. So as I breathe in, my body senses this pressure and it vibrates through the connective tissue, which is the spider web, and it tells every other cell what to do. The fascia tells the body what to do. That's the largest sensory organ in the body. And that reminds me, when we were talking about tongue-tied and all that, it's like your brain is a sensory organ. So you have to repattern the sensory information in order to make motor changes. You can't make a motor change without changing the sensory information. That's Dr. Lois. So,
That's some good stuff. I like that.
thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad, especially from somebody so experienced as you. I'm glad to hear.
Right back at you. I mean, I literally this whole time I've just been thinking like, what a wealth of knowledge and just thank you for sharing. Like, thank you for sharing what you know. And I loved how you were saying earlier, I can't remember if it was pre or after we started recording or not, how like we're not above anyone else and we're not below everyone else. We're just here. We're sharing, we're teaching. And I'm just sharing with what I've known to be true and what I've experienced and what I've been exposed to. And I want to continue to expand those exposures because that's how we get better. There's so many different ways to learn, and you have to approach it so differently for your audience, depending on who you're speaking to. And I had one client that had like some pretty high sensory difficulties. And I kept saying, like, breathe through your nose. And it took her friend saying, like, it's not actually your nose. Like, she was like trying to use the muscles of her face to like pull it in. And I was saying, breathe through your nose and your diaphragm. And it took her about 4 weeks for it to click. It's not here, it's down there. So it is always
Yeah.
a gift.
This is just an aperture.
Right. Right. I mean, this is just what we figured out later. Like, this is the entry point.
Yeah.
This is just where it comes in.
Yeah.
And this is our backup so we don't die, because our body's main goal is to keep us alive. So this is just where it comes in. But you're right, it is the whole body. And in my head, I was just thinking, man, I'd love a slow-mo of a fish breathing in and out just to like watch the whole whole thing expand. But Bryan, thank you so much. Thank you for your knowledge, for your wisdom, for your time, and you're a joy and a light. And I absolutely would love to speak with you again when you have time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you're constantly smiling, so it made it very easy for me. And I know the Southern charm. I have one of my ex-clients, good friend, was Beaufort, South Carolina.
Oh, yeah. Well, honestly, what I've currently been doing is I realized with all the smiling, I'm just getting these lines. So I've been working on like my facial cupping, like trying to like help support the muscles of my face. But so it goes. Let's tell everyone how they can find you, how we can follow you. I know your Instagram handle is breath. Is it breath_verse?
Yes.
All right. And then tell us your company. How can people work with you? What is the best way to get a hold of you?
I named my company Quantum Fitness because oxygen brings energy into the body.
Yes.
And that energy carries a positive electron. So it's quantum energy. So my website is quantumfitness.org.
Yeah.
And when you click on services, you can either see that I have a 30-day breathing program.
Right.
That's automated. You can practice it on your own. The videos stay with you for life. You never lose them. There's a private Telegram group. So I'm able to really coach you for life. Once you buy the program, you're part of the community. And I'm trying to create a community of heart-centered #pro breathers.
Okay. #pro breathers.
Yep. And there's 2 other ways to work with me. I have a 6-month program. So a lot of people, after they do the 30-day program, they want to be able to advance their breathing. Or some people just want immediate coaching. So it's a 6-month program where I coach you one-on-one, and then I give you a breathing routine every single month based off monthly assessments. So every month I assess your breathing through specific tests that we use. And then, of course, one-on-one breathing sessions as well as training, as well as nutrition. Yeah. And my email is quantumfitnessorg@gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, Bryan, thank you again.
Yes, my pleasure, Perrin. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
Enjoy Salt Lake City.
I am. Thank you.
All right. Bye.